And we're on in 5. And good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Xanadu Gallery's 2015 through 16 mentorship broadcast. This is our first broadcast for this season. It's great to have all of you here on the session. I know we've got a good audience joining us this afternoon. And as we get started, I'd like to kind of go over some of the, first of all, just the logistics of these mentorship broadcasts. I know that many of you have joined us in previous sessions, but we also have a number of you who are new to not only the mentorship, but to our broadcasts. And so I want to give you kind of some hints and tips and techniques for joining in these broadcasts. And there are a couple of main things to keep in mind, and I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the slideshow. Give me just a second to pull up here. And so first and foremost, it's important to keep in mind that we're going to try and keep to a fairly regular schedule when it comes to these sessions. And the scheduling that worked for both Judith and myself for this year was going to be on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. So kind of block those out on your calendars and set aside time. We'll try and keep very consistent on those, although of course there are always instances where we'll run into a conflict, and we'll certainly give you plenty of a heads up if that's going to happen. But for now, get those penciled in on your calendars so that you can be sure and attend all of the live sessions. I also want to mention that the broadcast page that you're watching this on from the Xanadu Gallery's Art Business Academy is going to be your hub for everything that's going on in these sessions. And so not only can you see the live sessions as they occur on this page, as we archive the recorded sessions, you'll be able to come back to this page, and if you've missed a session, you can go down. In fact, let me just bring this up so you're seeing that as well. You'll be able to scroll down, and below all of the timing information, we have the archive section, which will compile all of the broadcasts as they become available. And so this page is really the like I say, kind of the hub of everything that's going on. So if you have questions, if you're wondering when the next session is, you can come back here as we come up with our kind of our schedule and outline and syllabus, if you will, for the different topics that we're going to be covering. That will show up here, as will all of the documents that come into play during the session. So it's a good idea to go ahead and bookmark this page and keep it close at hand so that you can come back and get any information that you need about the live sessions. Also, this year we're going to be doing something that's going to be a little bit different than previous years, in that in addition to doing these kind of live broadcasts with everybody in the session and talking, I'm also going to be doing a series of pre-recorded sessions that will be kind of companions to the live sessions that we're doing. So in addition to the conversations that Judith and I are having about her work, we're also producing a number of videos that kind of go along with that, that you'll watch to kind of learn principles that we're going to be discussing, step-by-step instructions to do things like social media campaigns, email marketing. So these pre-recorded sessions will serve as kind of the step-by-step guidance, and then those will lead into the live sessions that we're having, where we'll discuss what we've been doing there and make plans. So kind of keep an eye out for both of those kinds of sessions. Also, something that we're doing that's a little bit different this session than in previous ones, and you can already begin to see this, is that we're opening up the live sessions so that other artists can join into the live stream. In the past, it's always been a two-way conversation between me and the mentorship artist, which is great, but this year we want to bring some of the rest of you into the conversation. And so you will see down at the bottom of the screen other artists joining in, and they will get to be, come in live and ask questions or make comments at various times. I will ask all of those of you who join live, that as you come in, if you'll make sure you mute yourself so that we're not listening to your cats meowing or dogs barking or whatever other sounds may go on in the background as you're coming into the session. That would be great. And the way that you join that is also on the broadcast page. You'll need to have, of course, a webcam and microphone hooked up to your computer. It's best if you have a high-speed internet connection as well. And then on the broadcast page, let me bring that up for us once again, you'll see that about halfway down the page there is a button that appears that will allow you into the session. So this is in addition to up above where we have just the regular video streaming. If you scroll down, you'll see that, and you click on that button, and it'll help you load up the software that you need to attend the session down below and be in the video stream live. That button only appears about 5 minutes before the call starts, and we're only able to allow 10 people to come into that session. So it'll kind of be on a first come, first served basis, and if you can't get in live in the web stream, you can always watch the video session up above. So with that kind of covers most of the broadcast logistics. Now, one other thing I do want to mention is that, as in the previous years, we are going to be creating and making available to you a Google Plus community page, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with Google Plus, it is a social network started by Google. I think initially the intent was that they were going to compete with Facebook, so it's very similar in a lot of ways to Facebook. They have utterly failed to be a viable competition to Facebook, but it does offer some nice tools and functionality, and it's a great place to create a community. And the reason that I do it on Google Plus instead of Facebook is that you'll see that members of the mentorship broadcasts are an active lot. They, I'll be encouraging you to post images of the artwork that you're creating. You can post questions and discussion there. And with the many artists who are participating, it comes a very lively and active place. And the concern is that if we throw that into your Facebook feed, suddenly your nice, calm, well-curated Facebook news stream would explode with all of this community activity. And so in an effort to kind of keep those separate and to allow the focus of the mentorship community to stay on that, we've kind of broken it out into Google+. If you're an avid Google+ user already, you may see some of that activity happening on Google+, but I suspect that most of you are Facebook users and not so much the Google+ users. So those are the basics of these sessions. You're going to see that they're fun, they're somewhat informal. It's a forum for us to have discussions as Judith and I work together to promote, market, and sell her work. And that kind of leads to the next thing I wanted to talk about today, which is a little bit of, I wanted to share a little bit of the process that I employed to go through all of the applications and the review process and the selection process. I know a lot of you have been very curious about that. Most of you applied to potentially be the mentorship artist, and so you've wanted to know, why wasn't I selected? What did I do wrong? And or what happened? And what was that process like? And so I did want to spend just a few minutes today in this first broadcast talking a little bit about that and how it worked. Not necessarily that that's going to make you feel any better, but just so you have an idea of what the selection process looks like from my end. And it's a bit of a challenge. This is our third year of the mentorship process, and initially when I came up with this idea of creating a mentorship, my idea was that I wanted to be able to take some of the concepts and principles that I shared in blog posts, in the couple of books that I've written, and I wanted to be able to work one-on-one with an artist to be able to implement and put those things into practice. The mentorship was kind of an opportunity to do that, while at the same time allowing an audience of artists to watch that process, kind of have a bird's eye view of what was happening as we worked together. And for those of you who participated in the last couple of years, I think you'll agree it was a fun and fascinating process. Got to see some great success for the previous year's artists. And, obviously this year I wanted to continue that, but this year I also wanted to take a slightly different approach and cover subject matter in a little different way. The previous 2 years we kind of started at square one, working on some of the very basics with the artists that were selected, Carolee Clark and with Brian last year, and worked our way through all of those things. And certainly we're going to be doing some of that, biographies and artist statements and reviewing websites and all those kind of things. We'll be doing that this year as well. But I wanted to shift the focus this year, rather than focusing on what it takes to get ramped up and start working with galleries, what it takes to work towards having a show with a gallery. I kind of wanted to start almost as if we're getting started at that point where maybe as an artist you're already in a gallery, already have representation, or a gallery's just agreed to represent you. And this year I wanted to focus on, okay, what happens next? What is the process that a gallery uses to promote and market an artist's work? How are relationships built with collectors? And I also wanted to be able to do some, I don't want to call it experimentation, but in a sense, we're going to be doing some labs where we're going to be trying some new things that not even I have tried before, in terms of some in-depth social media marketing, and working to bring some interesting technology into the gallery, and into the relationship building with the client and the artist. And without going into too much detail in that today, because we're getting started, I will just tell you that there's going to be some fun things that we're going to be doing. And in essence, what I want to do this year is be able to give you and present to you, and as I work with Judith, show you different creative ways to think about marketing your art. Our focus is going to be on showing Judith's work and promoting it to our clients and collectors. But my intention is that as we do that, you'll be able to get ideas and new perspectives and new ways to think about marketing your own artwork and pursuing your own collectors, that you can then take back to your art business and take some of those ideas and run with them. And frankly, we're going to be getting into some depth with some of these topics. I want to be able to show you step by step some of these processes, so that you could then go in and do exactly the same thing that we're doing. And I'm specifically thinking of things like creating ad campaigns in Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. I want to show you the nitty-gritty and nuts and bolts of that, so that we're not just speaking theoretically, we're seeing how it works, and giving you the opportunity to experiment with your own Facebook page and Facebook advertising, with putting videos together and those kind of things, and applying those to your career. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Like I say, some of it's going to be a little bit experimental, so there will be some trial and error on the technical side of things. But it's an opportunity for us to share ideas and to work together, and I'm looking forward to having that interaction with all of you. And I definitely want to encourage you to feel free to reach out. Like I say, the Google Plus community is going to be a great place to do that. That's where I'm going to try and keep all the communications and conversations, any communication that Judith and I have, we'll try and do through Google Plus, so that there's a really high level of transparency in terms of everything that's going on during this process, which was a long way of getting around and coming back to talking about then the selection process. And So this year, in thinking about everything that I wanted to do, I was working and thinking towards, okay, who would be, what would the ideal artist look like in this scenario? And it's a little bit difficult to come up with an exact picture of what you're looking for as you get started, because you just have no idea what the submissions are going to be, who's going to be applying. But I had some ideas that I wanted to find someone, who obviously already had some experience, was already established in terms of having an art business and having sold some work. Obviously, also in terms of the quality of the work, was already to a point where we could kind of hit the ground running in terms of showing the work in the gallery. And so my first pass-through of the mentorship applications, the round one applications, was basically looking at those really broad factors. I'm looking for an artist who has a little bit of experience here. Well, that, truth be told, was not very helpful, because I had a tremendous number of you who were very easily could have sat in the mentorship chair and been very successful there, and so I had to come up with some creative ways to be able to narrow it down. It was just an almost impossible task. We had over 500 people apply for the mentorship position, and my job was to go from 500 down to 1, and this is just an incredibly difficult process. And so, part of it was looking through and looking at artists who I found to be interesting, who were doing something creative in terms of their work. I was looking for the quality. So this will show you what I mean by this being an informal and sometimes technically challenging process. Apparently, my microphone just decided to cut out and turn my camera blue on me. Let me see if I can bring myself back in here. Well, I'm back in, but now apparently I am a Smurf, at least in my video. So I could try and fix that, but rather than spend time doing that, I'm just going to keep rolling here, and pretty soon we're going to be talking to Judith anyway, so you won't have to see my my blue face here. But anyway, in that selection process, what we ended up doing was coming up with a system that allowed me to both do some comparisons, but then also randomize the selection process. And I felt this was important as well, because as many of you know, I have relationships with a large swath of my audience in terms of, some of you I've spent some time with in previous mentorship broadcasts. Others are members of the Art Business Academy, or just very active in the blog. And so I had to think about a way, how can I also, in addition to finding a great candidate, how can I also keep this fair so I'm not favoring artists that I know? And so part of the selection process was also randomized, helping me pull out a random selection of artists during that process. And then finally got you to round 2, where I had 100 artists to go through. And again, just looking through, comparing each artist, and kind of deciding based more on the responses to the questions than necessarily solely on the artwork. Who had an interesting background, who had interesting vision, and that kind of got me halfway there, and then the process of interviewing the artists got me the rest of the way there. Now, as we begin talking to Judith today, and I introduce her, I think you're going to get a sense of, ultimately, after our conversation, why I felt Judith was just a great candidate. and I won't go into too much detail on the whys there. I think it'll become pretty obvious to you. And so with that, I want to go ahead and bring Judith in. Welcome, Judith, to this year's broadcast. It's great to have you here. And if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, there we go.
All right, so I'm here.
You're here. You're live and welcome. And you're not blue, so that's a good thing.
No, I'm not blue.
So, Judith, I'd like today to just spend a few minutes, in essence, doing what you and I did in our phone call as I was interviewing you for the final round, and that is just spend some time letting members of the audience get to know you a little bit better and your background. And so I have just a series of some simple questions that I wanted to discuss with you, get a little bit of your background. And I think probably the best place to start is, let's just start with some geography and tell us a little bit about where you live, where your studio is, and give us some background on location.
Okay, well that's a very easy thing to do. So I live in Northern California. I live in a suburb of Sacramento, so no beach, no mountains, but it's the hidden California, the California nobody knows about, which is most of us. And then my studio is right here in my home. That's where I am right now. And so when I get to work in the studio, I get to just walk down the hall, which is really cool. I just have to be careful what I'm wearing. Sometimes I'll walk down the hall and, oh, just look at something, and then before you know it, I've got paint on something I didn't mean to get paint on.
And how long have you been in the Sacramento area?
I was born and raised here, actually, and then we moved away when I was a kid when we moved back. And was back here, went to college here, got married. My husband joined the Army, so we left again, and then we came back. So off and on my entire life.
And so talk a little bit about your childhood. You know, we don't have to go to like a psychiatrist level discussion of your childhood, but talk a little bit about growing up, and specifically, you know, how art was or was not a part of that growing up, where your creativity came from.
Okay, so my mother was always an artist, not professionally, but she was always very creative. Oh, look, you look better. So creativity was always encouraged. And she taught me some things like perspective drawing and mixing colors, that kind of thing. I was also very much encouraged, or at least not discouraged, from all of the messy things that a creative child will do. I was really big on building dioramas for a while when I was in elementary school, and building things for tiny dolls. So there was all kinds of, especially lots of little giblets of pieces of paper around, and you know, it was just very much a part of growing up, was creativity in various forms. So it was always there.
And what about in terms of in your schooling? Were there art classes, you know, both at a primary and secondary level? Did you take art classes in college? Talk a little bit about your education.
So at a certain point when I was in high school, I earlier than that I don't remember, well, there was art in the schools a lot more than there is now. As far as schooling goes, by the time I got to high school, I really felt like my creative outlet was going to be writing. So that was really what I was focused on. And like I said, I went to college here in Sacramento at Sac State, and I have a journalism degree. That was definitely the thing that I was going to do until I took my first photography class. And I took it because I thought it was going to be an easy A. which is funny because I now teach that kind of elementary photography class. So I'm very familiar with some of these students who think, oh, this is just going to be fun and easy. And fun, yes, not always super easy. But that very first photography class just completely sucked me in. I was captured by the magic of the darkroom. And then very much after that, my emphasis became much less on the writing, much more on every single solitary photo class I could possibly get into, and graphics and that kind of thing. So not a formal kind of traditional art training at all, but my own path.
Yeah, and when you think about that that path and that process, you know, what do you think it was that? Why did the gravity pull you in that direction? Why aren't you out, you know, doing journalism today instead of creating art?
That's just how I am, I guess. I mean, at a certain point, because I always did creative jobs, and I didn't go right into being an artist. I did work part-time for a while, I should say. I was full-time assisting a commercial photographer. And then I worked in graphics, and I always wanted to come back to photography and, you know, as my art. And at a certain point, I was not working. I had 2 babies and no creative outlet. And my husband came to me and basically asked why I was so hard to live with. And I really didn't know. And we had to sit down and talk for a while before we both figured out together, if I wasn't doing something creative, I am not a pleasant person to live with. Not intentionally, but that's just kind of who I am. And so at that point, I just started carving out time as much for my own sanity and my husband's sanity to create artwork. And so I started in photography, and I always hand-colored it. And that's kind of how I came into that recognition, you know, kind of the, you know, I am an artist, sort of like, you know, the first time admitting you're an alcoholic or something.
Now that's an interesting comparison.
Well, it's like, hi, I'm Judith, I'm an artist. So, yeah, no, that's definitely, it's just how I'm wired, and as long as I'm creating, everything's good. So at a certain point, you know, there's only so much art you can create for yourself before you've got to find an outlet for it. So that was kind of how I got into it.
And talk about how the work that you were doing at that point, and, you know, kind of as you got started, how it relates to the work you're doing right now, how similar or different was it when you began, and a little bit of the process. And as you do this, I'm going to go ahead and pull up on the screen some images that you had submitted in the submission process so people can see what the work is like.
Okay. So, like I said, I started out with black and white photographs, and I would hand color them with a variety of media. I started with the traditional oils, and then I moved to colored pencils, and then watercolors, and then watercolors and colored pencils. So I have constantly been adding to the process, and at a certain point, I found myself very, very much drawn to the mixed media pieces that I saw in galleries. And so I just kind of, it occurred to me one day, it's like, if that's what I'm drawn to, why am I not doing that? So I started incorporating my photographs and those techniques into mixed media pieces, and it's just been a constantly evolving kind of a process. So everything that I do now absolutely has a photograph in it. They generally are starting out black and white or at least monochrome. And then there's also layers of collage and paint and whatever I can make stick. So typically these days, I'll start with a wood panel and add texture, acrylic texture, and papers for collage. Then the photograph, which is generally, these days I'm actually shooting digitally and doing a transfer. So it creates a transparent image. And then I am adding colored pencils and acrylic glazes and wax pastel. If you see something like in this piece that looks like an actual leaf, it is an actual leaf that I've put in there. And I just keep adding and mixing and doing until it feels like it's done.
And in terms of the subject matter, what, you know, we kind of see some, and this will definitely be one of the things we talk about in a future session, is thinking about, you know, kind of what is your voice or your brand. And we see some real consistency, but we do also see some variety in terms of the subject matter. So what are you aiming for? What are you drawn to when it comes to your subject matter? What inspires you that way?
Well, natural items, you can definitely see there's always an element of nature. And this is something that's kind of there's been a recent shift. I used to be almost entirely work with landscapes, and I started finding little specimens like this skull, and those were fascinating me, and I started doing more kind of specimen things. So nature is the uh, primary inspiration. I can talk.
And talk also a little bit about what people's reaction has been to your work. What do people tell you in terms of what draws them to the work, or what do they find to be unique in the work that you're creating?
So not surprising, people who are attracted to nature, who love natural things, they're attracted by that element that they see in my work. I've had a lot of people consistently over the years tell me that my work would give them a sense of peace or a sense of spirituality. It'll help them see the beauty in the natural world that's all around them. That's always been pretty much the draw that they've expressed to me.
And in terms of, let's kind of shift gears just a little bit and talk about what it's been like in terms of getting your work out in front of people. How have you shared your work? You know, what have you done in terms of marketing and promotion and sales of your work? What's been your approach to building a business around your art?
Short answer, I have tried almost everything. So I started out with just little shows in coffee shops. The darkroom that I worked in, it was a rental darkroom. That was the first, maybe the second show exhibit I had of my work. So I did that whole kind of round with little places, an occasional gallery show, you know, group shows. At one point, I was actually invited to my first art festival. It was a very kind of small little festival at a local museum. And so that first festival, I actually made quite a few sales, and I thought, hey, this is really cool. So I tried festivals, and they worked fairly well for a while. But then as the economy started to be not so wonderful, so the shows weren't as well, and it was a lot of work. It's kind of those, festivals. I'm sure a lot of people who are watching know that is just a tremendous amount of physical labor. And then later, after I said I didn't want to do them anymore, my husband was like, "Oh, thank you." So the fact that I was gone a bunch when he was home sometimes. What else have I done? I've certainly had my work in galleries. I have my work in, it's kind of, the number of galleries has waxed and waned. So I've done, your book was one of the things I read many years ago, and one of my good friends and I kind of made ourselves gallery buddies, because it makes it so much easier to approach a gallery owner when there's, two of us standing there supporting each other. So, I've done that. Just nothing too great, huge success. And I've done a little bit of Facebook marketing. I think I've sold maybe one piece off of Facebook once. So, every way I could figure, try to do it, pretty much. I'm sure there's something. I actually did. There was also, I tried a little bit of publishing. So at one point I submitted designs to a greeting card company, and worked really hard on, and that particular company wanted the artist to come up with the whole design, and so I did that with 10 different greeting cards, and 4 made it to test market. I think 1 made it to the final market, and after I don't know how many hours and lots of labor, I got a whole $250. So sometimes it's just kind of in that sort of work really hard, think we're doing things, and not a lot of payoff. Besides, of course, there's the intrinsic, at least I'm creating, but
yeah,
that's pretty much it.
And what about your studio practices? How much time are you spending, say, in a given week in the studio creating? What does your monthly output look like? Give us some ideas of how you work.
Well, that entirely depends on demand. When things are, going well, then I'll spend several days a week in the studio. If I'm working on the deadline for a show, I'll definitely, be in here a whole lot. Lately there's been less demand, so I've, had less of a prodding to be in here. I'm not a real strict schedule kind of person. I kind of frankly rebel against that. But I do try to block out days that are just studio time where I don't, I don't let myself get scheduled for anything else. And I'm very much kind of a fits and spurts kind of person. I can't say that there's a steady output. Unless there's a steady need, and then because there have been times when I've needed to pump out work. That sounds not good, but not exactly pumping it out. But it's like I can produce at times. I have at times produced, like for a show that needed 15 or 25 pieces. Be able to do that in, a couple of months. And those will be in varying sizes, of course. Sometimes I work in series. I always work in series, but sometimes it's very small pieces. So I've worked, I can get out, say, like, 10 little 6x6s within a week, pretty easily. So that's, I don't know if that entirely answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course our job then together is to ramp up that demand and pull you into the studio with more frequency. And we're going to be doing exactly that, and working towards getting inventory over to our gallery and getting sales going there. in terms of just thinking about what you'd like to see happen with your career in the future, what are your aspirations? What would you like to see happen in your future career?
Well, the most simple goal is I'd really like to just make a living from just my art. I teach right now part-time at a community college, which I very much love. But I would, I would love to have just my artwork produce an income. My favorite way to make money is selling large pieces of artwork. That's just, I would think that would be really cool. So just, I imagine that's going to take several galleries selling, pretty consistently. So that's kind of how I envision it working. That's kind of my goal. That's definitely my goal.
Excellent. Well, and part of what we're going to be doing between now and the next session is going to be mapping out, if you will, a path that we're going to work on together and what we're going to be focusing on. And so you and I and the rest of the community are going to join together and kind of think about some things that we want to see happen and areas that we want to focus on. But one of the main things that we'll be doing as well between now and the next session is talking about getting some work, some of your work over to the gallery and looking at inventory that's available and making that start. As I mentioned in the beginning, my goal is I'd like to have your work up in the gallery pretty quickly, and there's some things that we want to work on as we do that, but the sooner we get the work up in front of collectors, the more impetus we have to get everything else up and running and working. And so that's going to be one of our primary jobs between now and the next session is creating that roadmap and starting to work towards putting a body of work together to come over to the gallery. And some of the things I know that we're going to want to work on are, as I mentioned in the beginning, your biographical information. I'm a huge advocate of giving clients as much information as possible. So that'll be also one of the other things that we work on very early in the phases of putting this together. That information about you and your artwork, kind of taking some of the things that you've talked about today in your background, your inspiration for the artwork, taking that information and packaging it and putting it together in ways that will help us kind of draw people into your work, and that content, along with the images of the artwork itself, is going to form the basis of all of our efforts to promote and market you. So, like I say, it's those things that we begin focusing on right out of the gate. So I do want, this being our first broadcast, we've only got a few of you in the live stream, but I did want to throw it out there. If any of you that are in the live stream have a question for Judith or comments or any thoughts about what you'd like to see happen during this mentorship session, you can throw your hand up in front of the camera to let me know that you'd like to make a comment. I won't put any pressure on you to jump in this session. In future sessions, you'll see that and I probably shouldn't even tell you this because might make you nervous about joining, but I will just be pulling some of you into the conversation to have you talk about certain topics. But was there anything that anyone wanted to throw into the conversation or any questions? All right, I've got a thoughtful looks down there, but nobody jumping in. All right, well, that kind of covers the basis of what I wanted to get into in this first introductory session. In future sessions, you'll be getting kind of an outline for each session that's going to talk about what we'll be covering. It'll give you an opportunity to pre-form some questions going into those sessions. And I'm also going to give you a form on the mentorship broadcast page where you can hit us up with any suggestions or questions that you have throughout the process. So again, the whole goal here is to create a very interactive process where everyone who's participating can have input, have their questions answered, and watch us as we're in the process. And I just want to say to Judith that I'm very excited to be working with you. I've already cheated a little bit and shown your work to obviously to my gallery staff. And also to a few clients, and I can tell you that there's already some real interest there. So it's going to be just a really fun process. And of course, Judith, anytime that you have questions or comments, you know, or ideas that you want to throw out there and work on together, you know, like I say, I want this to be just an open, fun, and exciting process for everybody involved. So. I want to thank you and thank everyone who applied, everyone who signed up to watch these sessions. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. You should see in the next few days an email with the information for logging into the Google Plus group. You'll also get a reminder that the next upcoming session, because of the way these sessions are scheduled, today happens to be a 4th Tuesday. Well, we get 5 Tuesdays in September, so it's actually going to be a little longer stretch than we would normally have, which is great because it'll give me a little bit of time to get some preparation up and going and like I say, to get us working on the inventory. But our next session will be 3 weeks from now on the 2nd Tuesday of October. So until then, we will be in touch on Google+. I'll look forward to seeing all of you there, and then we'll look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thanks so much, Judith. Thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. I'm beyond words, which is not normal. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, and thanks everyone for joining in, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next session.